All right, number one, roll call, Ms. Suzanne. Ms. Suzanne, let the record reflect that Mr. Byrigger is absent. Ma'am.
May I make a request, please? Would y'all be sure that your mics are all
And Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson working nights tonight. I understand Mr. Byrigger is on his way. There's no chair's addition. Public comment, anyone wishing to speak on any of the agenda items, please sign the speaker card with Ms. Suzanne, please. Presentations, Ms. Suzanne, we don't have any presentations tonight, do we? Number 6, Parish President's report. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. We do have a proclamation. We have Ms. Martha Forbes here. And once Suzanne reads this proclamation, this is Domestic Violence Month, I guess throughout our nation, really. And so it was brought to my attention in some meetings recently. We've actually had 3 or 4 women killed in our parish this year, some way related to domestic violence. And obviously that's a terrible tragedy and indication of what's happening in some of the families in our community. And so we'd like for all of us to reflect upon this and really call upon the men in Ascension Parish to make sure that we treat women with the utmost respect and vice versa. But in most of the cases, seems to be the male who are usually the perpetrators in these events. And so Suzanne has a proclamation, and then Ms. Forbes just wants to say a couple things. Thank you.
To proclaim National Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Ascension Parish. Whereas domestic violence has reached epidemic proportions in this country, and 1/3 of American women, 31%, report being physically or sexually abused by a husband or boyfriend at some point in their lives. And whereas domestic violence affects every community in Louisiana, including more than 2,000 women and their children, who use the services of the Capital Area Family Violence Intervention Center Incorporated, known as the Battered Women's Program. And whereas studies show that at any one time, 1.5% of women in a community are being physically or sexually abused by an intimate partner, and 0.5% are being stalked. And whereas studies indicate that more than 1/3 of women in abusive situations do not report their abuse, and whereas domestic violence knows no economic, ethnic, or social boundary, it is a problem in all communities, regardless of race, religion, or geographic location. And whereas domestic violence affects every family, every community, and every workplace, and whereas domestic violence affects all intimate relationships, and whereas studies also show that the request for services because of domestic violence rises following national disasters, and whereas 3 women and 1 man in Ascension Parish died due to domestic violence in the last year, and whereas the Capital Area Family Violence Intervention Center Incorporated has sheltered women and their children from both Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita, and stands ready to assist the Capital Area and Ascension Parish to be safe from family violence. Be it proclaimed that the Parish of Ascension is committed to the prevention of further violence against women, and commits to continue services supported throughout the parish. And Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Ascension Parish and the Capital Area, in recognition of the important work done by domestic violence programs in our state, and encourage all citizens to actively participate in the scheduled activities sponsored by the Capital Area Ascension Outreach Battered Women's Program to work toward the elimination of personal and institutional violence against women. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, I, Ronnie Hughes, Parish President of Ascension Parish, State of Louisiana, do hereunto proclaim October 2005 as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Thank you. It's a mighty sober thing that we've read about. And unfortunately, it is a condition of our culture and our community that we have to deal with. In Ascension Parish, for the last 10 years, we have had programs in this area through August of this year. I have not yet looked at September statistics, but through August this year, we've worked with more than 110 women and their children in Ascension Parish. And we thank you very much for supporting the program. When we say that 1/3 of women may have been sexually or physically abused, you guys, I want to relieve your mind. It doesn't mean that 1/3 of men are abusers. I have some information for you if you're parents. Abuse starts very early. It starts in dating relationships, in teens. And we have a great responsibility to our young people on modeling for them, on respectful relationships, one with another, regardless of the sex, whether it's men and men getting along, or women and women, or dating relationships, or business relationships. These are all very important. So I thank you for giving us this proclamation, Mr. President, and for you listening to a few words. And I started handing out some material. I have 3 pieces of material, one that describes our program, one that is entitled Love is Not Abuse, Abuse is Not Love, in fact abuse is a crime, as you well know, and another about Love Does Not Hurt, which is for teenagers. So if you're a parent, if you've got children at home, this might be an instructive document. And would you please get your calendars out? There are 2 important dates. The BASF Geismar plant has supported the Battered Women's Program for 7 years. And again, they're having a golf tournament on October 21st at Pelican Point. And I would encourage you to support that activity, and it's a fun day. And then October 27th, because this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, is Take Back the Night. And Molly Noble, who is the advocate who works directly in Ascension Parish, is working with the community response team and in developing that program. I don't know exactly where it will be. It will probably be at 6 or 7 p.m., but we've moved it to make sure that all of the councilmen and women can attend that, as well as the general public. But is to remember those women who have been lost due to violence in a relationship. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to say a couple other things here. This is going to be a little long tonight because I guess we've had really about 5 weeks since we reported on a lot of things. As all of us realize, we've been under a state of emergency now for almost 6 weeks, and presently we have 2 still open, both Hurricane Katrina that was extended because of ongoing evacuees and other circumstances in our parish, and then Hurricane Rita now for about 2 weeks. And obviously, it looks like our parish is beginning to settle down a lot more than it was about 3 weeks ago, and things are getting a little better. FEMA, as well as the governor's office, is still trying to talk to all parishes about some smaller scale temporary housing, and we'll be talking more about this in the next 2 weeks. This past Monday, we had a meeting with the governor, several of the parish presidents and mayors throughout the southern part of the state that was impacted by the storm, and the magnitude of this is just so overwhelming, really, especially on both sides of us now, and the tens of thousands of homes that they need on a temporary basis. And we learned that the entire recreational vehicle industry in our country only makes about 1,000 a week. I mean 1,000 a month, excuse me, a week. And obviously we need in the hundreds of thousands, even if they put them on driveways where people can stay in them while they try to rebuild their homes in various parts of the state. So there's not near about enough available to FEMA or anyone else for that matter. Plus you have businesses, contractors trying to buy them so their employees have a place to live to begin reconstruction. And so we really have some serious challenges. It's going to take a lot of patience on behalf of us as well as our citizens for quite a while. They told us Monday that it may be 3 to 5 years before some of these people are back into their homes. And so obviously this is a huge devastation and a huge interruption of normal family life. We also have a couple problems on one of the road projects. An engineering company, Public Works, is working on that to see if we will need to involve some legal or bond work in that area to get some corrections made. There's one contractor and one set of roads that are involved with that. Some good news from the storm, and is that a lot of the work that's going on at the Lamar-Dixon Center related to animals rescue, we received this week a check from the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, $15,000 as a grant to our animal shelter, and we're just responsible for keeping receipts and so forth. So it's for our own parish animal shelter, and there's many other groups working out at the Lamar-Dixon Center, and we anticipate to maybe receive some other grants or donations of this sort. It appears that Katrina, we had between 500 and 600 homes or buildings with some structural damage, most all wind related. We had no water problems that we are aware of as far as flooding during Katrina. However, with the Hurricane Rita, we still don't have an exact number, and we're asking our citizens to call Public Works. The East Ascension telephone system that the parish got into about 3 years ago has not been working properly for people to call in on these automated lines, and so once we realize that, we're trying to get an exact count on that. And I want to remind all of us, and because of the meeting with the governor Monday evening that went pretty long, and I wasn't at the Drainage Board meeting, but there was 3 or 4 natural events that we have no control over related to the weather that contributed to what happened during the night Friday and Saturday as Hurricane Rita was approaching our area. The National Weather Service throughout this preparation was telling us that we would receive between 3 and 5 inches of rain in Ascension. Now once it began in the middle of the night and then increased in volume in the early daylight hours, some places they think we may have got 12 to 14 inches. I personally had 8.5 in my rain gauge in Burnside, and so obviously we received more rain than they thought we would. Secondly, the high tide in Lake Pontchartrain was 2 a.m. Saturday morning, about the same time the storm surge was hitting our coast. And the surge from the hurricane itself was greater than they had predicted in our area. And those estimates from 3 to 6 feet were revised to 7 and 8 feet in some areas that they actually saw storm surge that came all the way from Lake Bourne into Lake Pontchartrain into Lake Marpaw. And obviously boat traffic was curtailed between Livingston and Ascension Parish, where we have adjoining water bodies, and we lifted that earlier this week, but because of backwater flooding, still high water in the Lake Marpaw area and parts of lower Livingston Parish, and the boat traffic was causing water to get into some homes, we stopped the other than emergency boat traffic again at the request of President Grimm and his parish because of what was happening in his citizens along some of the waterways that we both share. In addition, the Hurricane Rita, we had a southeast wind and an east wind for 2 or 3 days. And obviously, even though we lowered the water level inside the McElroy pumping station to 0 during the day on Friday and kept all 5 of our pumps operating continuously throughout the night, we were not able to get the water out fast enough as it was coming in. And I think as we look into this and evaluate it, and we have Public Works and engineers looking at it, we'll probably find that we're going to need, because of the work that's been done on canals, dredging, getting water out faster, we're going to probably need some more pumps. We received, and you're going to receive in your email this evening when you get home from the United States Department of Energy, an update on what's happening in our country pertaining to petroleum products, gasoline, etc. We all heard the President call for conservation because of a possibility of shortages due to supply and demand, a significant decrease in supply right now. Junior Rodriguez, the parish president in St. Bernard Parish, reported Monday he still has 0 light bulbs burning in St. Bernard Parish. All 4 oil refineries are shut down. He anticipates at least 3 of those 4 will be shut down for 2 months at least. And so there's a lot of things happening, plus the Port Arthur area refineries are hit pretty hard with Rita. And so we're trying to, within parish government, and to encourage our citizens to support our president and do all that we can in the area of conservation. As you get that report, you're going to see a complete breakdown in a lot of different areas, refineries in various parts of the country, pipelines, supplies, etc. Another thing that really came out of this, besides seeing the flexibility and the worth of the Lamar-Dixon facility in emergency situations, was what we did with the Winn-Dixie Corporation as they were closing this store, especially 2 of the parish associates and many of you who volunteer there. And we want to thank the hundreds and maybe thousands of people who volunteer there in food distribution, clothing, etc. We turned that over to the Methodist Church as a large national group that comes in and works with recoveries for long periods of time, and so the parish relinquished that to them in the last few days, and our chief administrative officer is working with them to bring that about to be a smooth transition. We had a lot of material still in there. Our Operation Good Neighbor Fund raised over $50,000 in cash to help people with gasoline and medicines and drugs, and so I'm really grateful for what the people in our parish did to help people who were not in a position to help themselves. And it's amazing to see the spirit of volunteerism and charity that so many of our citizens displayed toward our fellow citizens from various parts of our state. The last couple issues I want to talk to you about, we've done a little brief slideshow to talk about 2 things so you understand where the parish president and administration is on these items and maybe better understand some of the decisions we've been making. And so I'm going to change places here and go to the microphone at the podium so I can read this. Thank you, Betty. One of the things you recall we've been talking about for 21 months we've been in office, plus in our summits before taking office, we talked about the need to consolidate parish government. And the transition team that I put together between the election and our inauguration worked on this diligently, try to really address it, and we just didn't feel like we could physically do it at that time. And so we've been talking, as you recall, we'd put in the budget for 2005 $300,000 to help us consolidate parish government and to renovate some things at the Public Works building. And then when the Lamar-Dixon Center opportunity became available, we began to evaluate that, and since we didn't have a census, on looking at building an administrative building at this time there, we went back to this plan that we had talked about when we did the budget last year with you, to where we would take planning and development and public works. And there's several reasons this makes a lot of sense from a business perspective as well as a service perspective for our citizens. As you realize, most of the people who go to parish government to get permits for building or whatever spend most of that time in planning and development and public works. And so It gives them an opportunity to go to one location. It gives those two departments a better opportunity to truly work together and create synergy in behalf of our citizens, being close to each other. Now, in addition, we're talking to the Department of Health and Hospitals about moving the health office there so that the sewer permits and things can be relocated at that same facility. And that's going to take a little more time working on that. But then our citizens would truly have one-stop shopping when they go get permits for various building programs and renovations, et cetera. I wanted to really, from a business perspective, one of the really crazy things that my transition team pointed out in my own background in business was to have our Office of Purchasing on Church Point Road in a building, and the finance department that they are part of in Donaldsonville, 20 to 25 miles apart. And even in the day of copy machines and faxes and all that good stuff, if you were running a business, you would understand that if you're the chief financial officer, you certainly want your purchasing people there very close to you. And the parish president as well, as the chief executive officer of the parish, wants that to happen. And so that's just a really good business move to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of parish government. In the long run, it should reduce our costs significantly, both from telephone services, gasoline, vehicles, et cetera. Well, we were running checks and documents and things back and forth all over the parish because of finance being over here in the parish seat, and the rest of the parish government, most of the rest of the parish government, on the other side of the river, and then the purchasing department, Office of Purchasing, not even with the finance department. And that just didn't make any sense from a business perspective as well as a service perspective and saving the taxpayers' dollars and using it more effectively. Now, some of you may argue from a political standpoint that when you do things like that, you lose some presence in the community, and that's true. But I can assure you that Ronnie Hughes is parish president. I don't care if parish government's in Modest or Brignac or Hobart or Oak Grove or Geismar or where it is. It's important that we make it as responsive and as cost-effective as we can for our citizens and improve the services that we provide to them. Of course, the major drainage division has just been moved around within that same building within the Department of Public Works, as well as Human Resources at this time. And of course, Office of Technology, which is part of Planning and Development, moved into a vacant house the parish had bought some years ago next to the Public Works building on the same piece of property now, adjoining. And as of this afternoon, and keep in mind these are estimates, we don't have final figures, but it appears that all of this will cost less than $50,000 of a $300,000 budget, which obviously is a lot of savings compared to what we put in the budget last year to try to accomplish this. Next slide, please, ma'am. Now, what's going to happen with this building, two or three things. Before the storm, Louisiana Transportation Authority had met with me and talked about the plausibility and the likelihood of moving that center closer to the site where the transportation center has been picked. And so they had asked about the possibility of office space. In addition, Judge Meir had called and talked to me about wanting to do something differently, one of our 23rd Judicial District judges. And we also need to upgrade the Public Works office in this part of the parish because of the building that we operate out of doesn't really have a very good office in it for the manager of public works on this side to really work out of, to do planning and thinking time and things he needs to do to plan the work on this part, this side of the river. And after the storm, because of the need in other parishes, for example, my office right now, which is in front of Judge Mears' office in the same building presently, we've had St. Bernard Parish using that now for weeks because they have completely displaced. There is no parish government in St. Bernard, and so they've been doing their payroll, and their chief financial officer and the information technology officer has been living in Donaldsonville and using those offices for about 5 weeks now. In addition, Orleans Parish Civil Court, through a directive, I think, from the state Supreme Court that we received, will begin to, and I emphasize civil court and not criminal court, will be using the parish seat courthouse for, we're not sure how long, because obviously Orleans Parish government, both the appellate courts and the state Supreme Court, their business has been interrupted significantly. And so they're looking for help. And this courthouse is used a lot less than the courthouse annex as far as courts and trials, and so they'll begin using this courthouse. And they understand when the process is starting some renovation and have to work around that. Now, Judge Mears is asked to move into where our finance office was. And as soon as we finish the consolidation, he is ready to move, he and his staff, into that area. We'll also, depending on what happens, and you'll see some slides here in a minute, may have some parish workers in there, may also have some in some other buildings. Now, my office will also, now I guess this will be the first time in the history that we've had a parish president's office that in the parish seat courthouse, the treasurer and the parish president and the lease receptionist will have an office in the courthouse. And that was an area that was vacated recently by the clerk of court, and we will just take existing furniture and so forth and move in there. And so that will become a suite for parish government in the parish seat courthouse. Now, in addition, we've had a local business who specializes in, as I understand it, it's a quasi-public, quasi-private entrepreneurial development business that works in partnership with the State Department of Economic Development for small businesses. And they have asked for space. And so we'll be asking the council if they give us a rental or some type of intergovernmental agreement to present to you and to legal. I've asked them to put together exactly what they want and told them that the old council office building would probably be available. It's been sitting vacant now for several months, not used most of the time, and they think that would meet their needs for what they're doing. And one of the things they're trying to do, and is obviously this is desperately needed, and when I spoke with the Donaldsonville Rotary Club last Thursday about, I think a lot of us have been hanging our hats on the transportation center coming, and if that doesn't come, we've lost opportunities to do other things. And we need to keep focused on the big picture, but I think we really need to also focus on smaller opportunities. As we've seen for years now, Baton Rouge has been creeping gradually closer to Ascension Parish. I think we will now see, as a result of the hurricane in New Orleans begin to move closer to Ascension Parish, both from a residential perspective and from a business development perspective. And so hopefully we will seize opportunities in this part of the parish to be proactive and with our own self-reliance and determination create some small business opportunities regardless if the transportation center comes or not, because probably no one in this room has much control over that. But we can control what we do with other opportunities now. And so business development, working in a partnership with parish government and the State Department of Economic Development, I think is something we really need to focus on, especially in this part of the parish, to develop the spirit of capitalism and entrepreneurship so that our citizens can develop a self-reliance and become self-sustaining and get away from government-sponsored welfare. And they can live the American dream and truly begin to have an opportunity to understand the importance of a good education, job preparation, skill development, and so forth. And one of the things that's happened as a result of this storm, and it's so big now as I meet with different agencies of the state and federal government, no one's got their arms around it yet. It's so huge. But I think we will begin to see our community college system and our technical college system, which is all part of one system now, get a lot more involved with short-term job development, skill development, workforce development, and we're going to have a lot of people, mostly citizens that were not part of our parish a few weeks ago, have a real need for that and have opportunities to improve themselves and to develop a workable living wage so they can sustain a family. Now, next slide, please, Betty. Now, that's the overall picture of what we're doing with parish government consolidation. And in summary, it's to obviously improve the service that we provide to our citizens and at the same time better use the resources that our citizens give us in hard-earned tax dollars. And then it's going to also give an opportunity for one-stop shopping, hopefully very soon, in our parish. Now, this is not the perfect plan. This is a small plan. This is a band-aid on an elephant in some respects because of the way our parish is growing. And we will need, in a few years, some type of administrative building that can truly house some things. But this will certainly improve things for the next few years. Now, some of our citizens have been questioning us about what we're doing to communicate with them. And as you know, your strategic planning committee with a subcommittee has been working with the administration for quite a while now. And it's dragging. I was hoping before Hurricane Rita that we'd have the ability to go live and just communicate with our citizens so we can tell them what we're doing in preparations. So this is kind of a recap that Office of Technology has put together, so all of you kind of know, and I plan on being at your meeting hopefully Monday at 5 if my schedule permits. E-Tel's transmitter and fiber is in place. Cox transmitter and fiber will be installed within a week, and this would then give us the capability of programming and live presentations to our citizens on what parish government is doing. You'll receive a request either through a budget amendment this year or through next year's budget for equipment and training to help bring this about. One of the things that they tell us we're going to need is somebody to do video production, to be out with cameras and doing this. And they're also working on a mission statement. Now, I think it's important that all of us try to come together on this, and I think it's important you understand where the parish president is and where I'm not. Constitutionally, I never want to see our parish become like Hitler did in Germany, and you take over the airwaves and you give the people what you want them to hear. From a parish government perspective, what I think we need is to communicate with our citizens what we're doing, especially in states of emergency. We have only one radio station in our parish. We have no TV stations per se owned by private enterprise. And so we're dependent on primarily the Baton Rouge markets to go up and communicate with our citizens and try to talk to them. And obviously when we all lose power, we lose cable vision, that's difficult to do. And we saw what a communication problem we have at Katrina with cell phones in the whole thing. However, one of the things is we will normally have is before the storms would come, we would still have power, and so we can tell our citizens what we're asking them to do, what we anticipate will happen. And so even though we've never had a mandatory evacuation in Ascension Parish I'm aware of, if we need that, we can communicate that, because normally we would have power in front of the storm, even though we may lose all of that after the storm. So, and to me, that's what the public dollars should be used for, is truly government access information that our citizens need to know about what is government doing for them, how we're spending their money, and especially in emergency situations, what we're asking them to do. Next slide, please, Betty. Now, I know some of you talk about local flavor and other things, and as much as I like to watch history, I have very little time for it, or hunting and knife show, or whatever it is, my personal opinion, and it's my opinion, and you need to understand it, that public money should not be used for that. Hughes Insurance or some other privately owned business should underwrite those. And I believe if you have quality program and content, that would happen in this parish. I really believe that. What we need to do in parish government is for people to see the meetings, administrative briefings, the council briefings, government calendars, the services, and etc. To me, that's critical. And many of our citizens are dependent upon that. The equipment we're asking you to buy and what we do in-house over the long run will save us a lot of money compared to what's been done in the last few years to get this information to our citizens. And I'll be willing to debate with you on the other stuff as far as public flavor and things like that. But I truly think that's private sector, free enterprise more than it is public money through government. Next slide, please, Betty. Now, getting a person in-house, and this is similar to what those of you who went with us last year to St. Charles to see what they do. They communicate live from the emergency operations centers with their citizens. The sheriff, council chairman, or whoever you want, school system, parish president, whomever, can talk to their citizens and explain what's going on. So you see some of the things that this person will be doing, working in conjunction with the Office of Public Information and the Office of Technology. Now, Randy and them in their department and Betty, Public Information, have made a lot of progress in the last few weeks. It's not always visible, but now our website, where these meetings can all be viewed there, as well as on 21 on Tuesday and Thursday nights, but they're not live on cable yet because we don't have those feeds in and out. Video streaming and a lot of stuff that I don't fully understand because I'm not a technology guru, but the younger generation obviously does. And would also give an opportunity if some parish governments, if we have road projects or planning and development, wants to make a report to our citizens, they can do that, where our citizens can see what's going on within their parish government. Okay, Miss Betty. Now, I think it's important if we're going to provide this equipment for other government entities that they help pay for some of this if we're going to do that. And I think that's a smart way of doing it if we can work that out. And it may be the Council on Aging. It may be the, like right now, the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Program is working with the Battered Women's Program to try to help in that area. And it may be a program they want to present to our citizens on the Government Access Channel. I think that's all some things that are very important for our citizens and part of government. Education, law enforcement, fire and rescue, public access. Anything else there, Miss Betty? Is that the last one? I think so. So, I could have talked to you for several hours what's been going on in the last 5 weeks. I tried to keep it 30 minutes or less, an update on in several areas of parish government. in the executive branch, administrative side. And if you want to ask me questions now, I'll be happy to answer them. I see you have on the agenda later something about West Side office. I'll be happy to entertain that then, or whatever you want to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is that all you have of your report?
Yes, sir.
Anyone have any questions for the parish president on his report? Moving to number 7, consent agenda. Motion by Mr. Byrigger, second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Any opposition to the motion? Having none, motion passed. Number 8. Council, every reassessment year, the Ascension Parish Assessor's Office goes out and reassesses all properties in the parish. Once she has done that, she has to post it, which she has done in the official journal, which was in the Gonzales Weekly, September the 16th, and again in September 23rd, to hear complaints of any and all persons who have filed a written appeal to the Board of Review in such manner as provided by the Louisiana Statute 47:1921. At this time, we need to go into Board of Review. Do I have a motion to go into
Mr.
Board?
Chairman, I move that we adjourn the meeting and reconvene as a Board of Review.
Motion by Mr. McConnell, second by Mr. Hillingsbeck, to reconvene, recess, and go into the Board Review. Any questions, any opposition? Having none, motion passes. The assessment lists were open for public inspection for a period of 15 days, which began on September the 1st and ended on September the 15th of 2005. And during the exposure period, all changes for clerical errors or erroneous assessments were made where necessary, and the 2005 assessment list for Ascension Parish has been corrected.
That is correct. Therefore, I'm here tonight to certify my 2005 assessment list to you as the Board of Review.
And in the Louisiana Revised Statute, the tax assessor also acts as your advisor to the objections to the that the taxpayer may wage. So she is your advisor in the adherence to those objections.
We have 4 properties that have written appeals. Those 4 are Wayne and Terry Dellimore.
DeLeo.
Geismer Vinyls Company, Occidental Chemical Corporation, or formerly Vulcan Chemicals, and Wagner Oil Company. Is there anyone present who filed a protest in the audience that wishes to address the Board of Review?
Yes, sir.
Will you state your name?
Yes, my name is Wayne DeLeo. I appealed to the Board of Review because I received my assessment. I became aware of it early in 2005, but I was past the appeal period at that time, so I waited until now to appeal. And I have appealed the assessment for 4 different reasons. The assessment came in, let's see, do you want me to speak in terms of the 10%, or do you want me to speak in terms of the fair market value? How do you normally address this issue?
However you wish to deliver it. If we have any questions, we will go to our counsel.
Okay. The assessment that the assessor came up was $110,100. I objected to that assessment because of 4 different reasons. One, I had an independent real estate appraiser come in on July 18, 2001, and give me an appraisal of that property. At that time, I was not the owner of that property. Rather, the property was owned by my father, who was deceased at that time, and was owned by his estate. The purpose of the appraisal at that time was to determine value for estate purposes. At that time, the appraisal came in at $100,000, not at $110,000. I think,
That was in '01?
yes, sir, on exactly July 18, 2001. I subsequently purchased that property in 2002 myself from the estate. I purchased that property for $90,000. I think what a willing buyer and a willing seller is willing to purchase a property for is more reflective of the fair market value. You can argue, or excuse me, not you can argue. When I spoke to the assessor in this regard, she said because it was between related parties, that type of transaction is ignored. I think it's inappropriate because we had the property up for sale for $100,000, got nowhere selling it. Finally decided, what are we going to do with the property as the estate? We said, okay, if we list it, it's going to cost us 6% to list the property, and it's probably going to take us a minimum of 6 months to sell it. And therefore, the holding cost would be about $4,000. So therefore, if one of the members of the family is willing to give the net amount, namely $90,000, we're willing to sell it, since that's what the estate was going to get anyway. So that's how the value of $90,000 came about. So again, I think that was a fair valuation at that point in time. The next point I'd like to make is when I met with the assessor to discuss my appraisal that she had made, she gave me a sheet which is used for purposes of appraising property in my area. The appraisal was done using a price per square foot, Schedule 2, that she supplied to me. That price was used for property in my area in Downsonville, and most of Downsonville for that matter. I think that was inappropriate. The reason I think that was inappropriate, that appraisal value that she used is for the typical house. My house is a 2,020 square foot house with 2 bedrooms. I contend a house with 2 bedrooms is not as marketable as a house with 3 or 4 bedrooms, and therefore to use the same value per square foot for a 2-bedroom home as you use for a 3 or 4-bedroom home is inappropriate. And then my final argument is that I feel that the assessor has been inconsistent in Downsonville in her appraisals. Because when I look at appraised values of homes, and although I do not have the square footage available to me, the assessor does, and I know the homes, I look at the assessment that's in the public records, it's on the computer, I find that the values that she has given to those properties do not equal the values of those properties in my estimation. Realizing that I am not an expert like the assessor, I took a random sample of a piece of property that is up for sale currently at 212 Iberville Street. The assessment on that piece of property is $343,000, but yet that house is for sale for $657,000. I think we have some problem there with the assessment, where you may contend, well, that's an assessment less than fair market value. Is my contention that the assessor has not used fair market value to appraise all the properties. Although people generally do ask for more than what they expect to receive, I think to ask twice the fair market value is a little bit absurd. So I contend that and other examples I'd be willing to give to the Parish Council or the Board of Review, excuse me. I guess you're technically the Board of Review right now. I'd be happy to supply that to you. And again, my contention is my home is overappraised. I think $100,000 is a much fairer appraisal, and it should be used. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wanting to appeal to the Board of Review? Please come up, state your name and what company you're with.
Thank you. My name is Eston Singletary. I'm here on behalf of Geismar Vinyls Company this evening. And we're here obviously to appeal the 2005 ad valorem tax assessment for the company, and in particular the machinery and equipment portion of the assessment. If I could just give a little background of the company and how we got to where we are today, I think it might be helpful to the Board of Review. Geismar Vinyl owns part of the old Barden chemical facility that went into bankruptcy and was closed down. After the bankruptcy had been filed, Westlake Chemical Corporation, who's the parent company of Geismar Vinyls, inspected the facility and decided that it might be able to renovate several of the units there and bring them back onto production. And it started discussions with the bankruptcy court and Barden Chemical, who was the, as I said earlier, in bankruptcy at the time. Excuse me, at the time. As a result of that, the bankruptcy court put the facility out for bid, and Westlake, through Geismar Vinyls, purchased part of the facility, a VCM and a PVC facility, and they paid $5 million for the facility. At that time, the facility had been closed and was not in operation and was not in a condition to be put back into operation without significant capital investment in the facility. The sale actually closed in late 2002. Since then, Westlake, through Geismar Vinyls, has invested about $40 million into the facility. And both units are now running. There are approximately 60 employees on the direct payroll and 60 contract employees with a total payroll, including salary and benefits, of about $11 million. To date, the facility has not operated profitably. It's operated at a loss. But Westlake is confident that it will become a profitable facility, and it'll be a long-standing member of this community, and they're prepared to continue to invest money into the facility. After the facility was purchased, let me just go back a second. What we're here to discuss tonight is the fair market value of the assets that were purchased from Barden. We're not here to discuss the $40 million in additional capital improvements that Westlake put, or Geismar Vinyl put into the facility. The reason is that Westlake, through Geismar Vinyls, is participating in the 10-year ad valorem tax exemption program, which was approved by the state, and which that contract also was approved by the Parish Council. Those assets are on the tax exempt rolls. As the 10-year periods roll off, they will come onto the rolls, and Westlake will begin paying ad valorem tax on those items. So we're only here to discuss the fair market value of what Westlake purchased from Barden. As I said earlier, the purchase price was $5 million. After the sale occurred, representatives of Geismar Vinyls met with Mr. Spano, who was then the assessor, to determine what would be a proper assessment for the facility or the item, the personal property, tangible personal property and buildings that were purchased from Barden. And they arrived at a fair market value of approximately $4.7 million. Excuse me, $4.7 million. The reason it wasn't $5 million was because some of the assets included permits and other type things that aren't subject to ad valorem tax. So in 2003, Westlake filed their, or Geismar Vinyl filed their return using the numbers that they had discussed with Mr. Spano. They received a tax bill of approximately $82,000, which they paid in 2003. In 2004, Westlake again filed their ad valorem tax return, and they used the numbers that had been agreed to for 2003 for the fair market value of the items purchased from Borden. Much to Westlake's surprise, or Geismar Vinyl's surprise, they received a assessment in 2004 which said that the fair market value of what they had purchased from Borden was not $4.7 million, but it was approximately $80 million, okay, which is a significant increase, about a 14,000% increase in the fair market value of the property. There were some discussions with Ms. Michelle about what had been purchased, the condition of the equipment, what had been done to renovate, those type things. And Ms. Michelle recommended to the Louisiana Tax Commission that the fair market value of the items be decreased, but only to $38 million, which is still approximately $38 million, which is still significantly in excess of the $5 million total that Geismar Vinyls had paid for the facility. The cost of that difference, that gap could never be bridged, and so Westlake has paid that under protest and has filed suit for a refund. In 2005, Westlake again filed their ad valorem tax return using the values that it had, the $5 million that it had paid for the assets from Borden. When the assessments recently came out, however, rather than using the $38 million figure, approximately $38 million figure that Ms. Michelle had recommended to the Tax Commission, we were back at the approximately $80 million figure that we had begun in 2004. So we now have an $80 million fair market value, which equates to a little over $1.1 million in taxes, ad valorem taxes. And this is just, again to repeat, just on the items that were purchased from Borden. So now we're contrasting $1.1 million plus as opposed to $82,000, which we paid in 2003, the first year that we owned the facilities. And Geismar Vinyls obviously believes that $80 million is not remotely related to the fair market value of those assets. They believe that the proper value is the value agreed with Mr. Spano, which was $4.7 million. And that's what Westlake believes is appropriate. Certainly a jump from $4.7 million to $80 million in 1 year, albeit a reduction, and then a jump the next year to another $80 million fair market value, we think is just not reality. As I said, the facility had been shut down. It was not in operation. It was not subject to being opened without extensive capital investment. Westlake has put $40 million into the facility since then to get the 2 units up and running. So we plan to be here for a while, but we also think that the assessment should reflect, as to the Borden purchase, should reflect the fair market value of those items, which is the $4.7 million and not the $80 million that's in the current assessment. So we're here exercising our appeal rights to the Board of Review, and we would ask the Board of Review to roll back the assessment on the items that were purchased from Borden's to their 2003 level, which we believe is the proper measure of their value. That is what Westlake and Borden and the bankruptcy court in an arm's length discussion determined what they were worth. So again, on behalf of Geismar Vinyl Company, I would appreciate the Board of Review honoring the appeal and rolling back the valuation of the items purchased from Borden to what they were assessed at in 2003. I'd be happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Anyone has any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No one else wishing to speak on the appeals before us? All right. Just for informational purposes, gentlemen and Ms. Fontenot, as we sit on this Board of Appeals, this is not the last step that one can take. If they do not like the decision of the Board of Review, they can take it to the Louisiana Tax Commission, and they have to do so by October 20th. And the Secretary has copies to give the individuals so they can go forward with that. All right, Ms. Michelle, do you have anything that you want to add or information you want to share with the Board of Review?
Yes, I'd just like to share, I'm not sure if Mr. Singletary did get my last determination of assessment, but did you, Mr. Singletary? The last determination of assessment I had for Geismar Vinyls was $6.8 million approximately. I think the first information that you got was from, I'm not even sure who gave the information from my office, but we were not completed with our assessment at that time. And I did fax this to you yesterday, and also put it in the mail on this Monday, the October the 3rd. I thought probably that's what had happened, so I just want to make sure that you did get the correct one. I do have a copy here. But it is reflective to the, about the same, using the same assets of the $38 million that we used in 2004. But I just want to make sure that you did know that we did not use the $209 million. We still went back to the $38 million. Okay. So, and I do have a copy of that for you, so you can take with you. You're welcome. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will vote on the appeals. We will take them one at a time.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McConnell.
I just want to make certain that I understand this, and I did meet with Ms. Michelle before this meeting. If we take the action tonight to uphold the assessor's assessment, then these property owners still have the right to appeal this assessment to the Louisiana Tax Commission, and the Louisiana Tax Commission has on staff professional appraisers and assessors who will re-examine each and every case. Is that correct? So this is, it's not the final stop, and then they also have the opportunity for additional professionals to look at this, to look at each case in particular, and will hear the testimony that we heard tonight along with supporting documentation. Okay, then I'm prepared to vote.
Yes, by our state law, you know, the Board of Review will have to render their determination from tonight to the taxpayer. And of course, I have already, rendered my written determination. Those will both be turned into Louisiana Tax Commission. The taxpayer then will have the opportunity to file an appeal to them, and they have until October the 20th to do that. So yes, you are correct.
Mr. Valentine.
I'm assuming it is appropriate to make a motion on each one of them.
Individually, separate.
So I would move that assessment number 1134800, Mr. Wayne DeLeo, that this board concur with the assessor's determination of assessment.
A second.
Is there any questions? Is there any opposition? Having none, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Valentine.
Assessment 20014-216, Wagner All. I also move that this board concur with the assessor's determination of assessment.
And I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Any opposition? Having none, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, assessment number 9482000 and number 200120015, Vulcan or Occidental. I move that we concur with the assessor's determination.
I second.
Motion by Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Dempsey Lambert. Any questions? Any opposition? Having none, motion passes. Ms. Suzanne, let the records reflect that the chairman will recuse himself being an employee. Mr. Valentine, you gonna finish?
Assessment number 200171144 and number 200166656, Geismar Vinyls. Move that we concur with the assessor's determination of this assessment.
I second.
Have a motion to accept the assessor's recommendation, second by Mr. McConnell. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to abstain being I work at this particular facility.
Mr. Todd Lambert abstains. All right. Any opposition? Having none, motion passes. All right, gentlemen, do I hear a motion to reconvene to regular?
Motion. Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Mr. Babin.
Before you reconvene, I think the assessor's going to need a motion to accept the 2005 tax rolls in toto.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Valentine, second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Is there any opposition to the motion? Having none, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn the Board of Review and reconvene as the council.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McConnell, second by Ms. Fontenot. Is there any opposition to the motion? Having none, motion passes. Number 9, acceptance of bids. Ms. Bonnie Burrell.
Good evening. On September 13th, we received bids for bunker gear for Fire District Number 1. Based on their recommendation, we'd like for you to approve this bid.
Motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Todd Lambert,
Second.
second by Ms. Fontenot. Is there any question? Is there any opposition? Having none, motion passes. Number 10, vacating west side offices. Councilman, Mr. Shakespeare.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The President had touched upon it a little earlier, and I just wanted to bring it to attention to the people and plead with administration that right now Donaldsonville is the parish seat, and in doing so, I think we need to be sensitive to the fact that it is a parish seat, and we had, I think it was 13 employees in the finance department here. In the past, we've had a West Side coordinator that took in things, information from people in the area so that they wouldn't have to go across the bridge to get information from the other side of the parish. That position was done away with. The finance was the last group of people that were actually working at the parish seat on a daily basis, except for a DPW division. The plan, and I support the parish president plan to try to consolidate parish offices as much as possible. But for a good business, I also think it's important to be sensitive to people and the people that you serve, and that as we're moving approximately 11 of the 13 people to the East Bank offices, we're leaving a void in our parish seat that does have an effect on the economics of this area. It doesn't appear, if you just looked at it as numbers and you were sitting on the East Bank of Gonzales where things are bursting at the seam, it doesn't appear that that's a big deal. But if you're one of the businessmen and had a shop on the West Bank, or if you had a restaurant on the West Bank, and you were in a position that they're in right now, and economically things are just hanging on. All of the businesses are just hanging on. And to have the parish office have a negative evacuation, so to speak, of the West Bank to the East Bank, I think is bad timing at this point in time. And I just think it's a bad message that you send to the people here that are struggling to regain an economic advance at this area. You stated that the judge is going to move his offices to the other finance offices, which is fine, and that you would be moving into the courthouse, and that Public Works would be presented with an office there, and all of those people were here already. They're not moving to the West Bank, they're here, they're just shuffling around. The St. Bernard people that are here have come here regardless because there is office space and things available. I am not against consolidating finance with everything. If that's your plan to do it and you think as administratively that's the best way to go, then I would support that. However, I do think that if you make that move, they should be replaced, and so that we do not have a net loss over here, because it sends a negative message to the people over here about services that we're going to have, and it is an economic hit on this area, be it so small as it appears to be. But it is a hit because of the approach of different people about the west side of Ascension Parish. And I think any negative thing that happens here is compounded with the problem. And so with things, the new Walmart and the new people that have moved in has helped a great deal. And I just believe that fundamentally, as a parish seat, we need to offer more of a presence in Ascension, in Donaldsonville. You know, as you look at it, and you can use all kind of excuses as to why, and I realize that to provide services, we need some satellite offices and we need to get around where the people are. I understand that, and I support that fully. But when you look in California, the capital is Sacramento, and state offices are in Sacramento, not Los Angeles. And if you look at New York, the capital is in Albany, and the governor is in Albany, and his office is there, not New York City. In Livingston Parish, the offices are in Livingston, not in Denham Springs, and their government offices are located there. And so I think as long as our parish seat is in Donaldsonville, we should have a very important presence of our parish workers and our parish office there and manning this office. We would be glad to offer you, if you want to consolidate parish government, we would make sure that we would have some facilities available that we could support for the parish government. And I realize that we would have to build some things. But it's just not the point of moving those people. It's the sensitivity to the situation in Ascension Parish, in West Ascension right now, with everyone on the East Bank talking about let's slow down growth. Let's do some things to slow down the growth here. And in West Ascension, we're looking to build growth, and we're looking to get people to come here and acquire that. And so therefore, we think it's important that the government stay here, keep its presence here, and not have a net loss. And right now, as it looks, there's going to be about 10 or 11 people as a net loss on the West Bank, as I understand it. And I would like to see that we would do something to equalize whatever was taken away, that we would find some department that could replace those people so that we can have at least an even amount of employees here.
That's it. All right. Number 11, a resolution of all systems bridge replacement program. Mr. Bill Rue.
Mr. Chairman, each year for the parish to participate in the all system bridge program, they must issue this resolution, accept and issue this resolution, and we're coming before you, recommendation to do that.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Motion by Mr. Denson Lambert, second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Any questions? Any opposition? Having none, motion passes. Thank you, Bill. Number 12 is a housekeeping issue. Okay. There's a housekeeping issue. It's a motion to authorize an appropriations in the 2006 budget of $225,000 from the sales and use tax number 1 fund to the courthouse construction fund to provide for the additional revenues required for renovations to the courthouse in Donaldsonville, Louisiana. I have a speaker that would like to speak on this issue. Mr. Harold Capone.
Good evening. I just, since most of you are too young to remember, I'm going to go back to years ago when most of the assessment on the west was on the west side of the parish. Most of the taxes were collected on the west side of the parish. And as a young man, that's quite a long time ago, I used to go to the Polish jury meeting, and I used to hear Mr. Gilbert Burat ask, well, we need some help for drainage in my district. Can you help me? Or Joe Pierre would ask for playgrounds in his area. He needed some playgrounds. And Mr. Paul Alexander would ask for something he needed in Santa Monica. Neil Noah's Vic there would need something in Sorrento. And they didn't have a lot of money. It wasn't collecting money on the other side of the river. It was all being collected here. You know, in Donaldsonville, most of the leaders that led to appropriate this money for these projects were Donaldsonville police jurymen. Ralph Falsetta, Raymond Julia, Mr. Berg. Those people led this charge. And they didn't turn their back on the east side when it was down. What I'm asking you tonight is don't turn your back on the west side. Appropriate this money. I don't care if we ever hold another day of court. I want to put the courthouse back like it was. I don't care if we have another day of court in Donaldsonville. Because I believe if you break the law, you ought to be punished and sent to Gonzales to go to court. But we do. What we do in Donaldsonville, we have a courthouse. You guys got a place where you hold court. But I want to ask you and plead with you, let's restore our, probably the most treasured place we have in the parish, most historical place we have in the parish is our courthouse. And I want to ask you guys to approve this tonight and give us a hand this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Harrell. Motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Shakespeare. Any questions? Any opposition? Having none, motion passes. Number 13 is trick or treat time. Gentlemen and Ms. Fontenot, done a little survey. It appears that Sorrento is going to observe trick or treat Monday, October 31st from 6 to 8. Gonzales has a meeting on Monday, and they are almost certain that Monday, October 31st from 6 to 8 also.
Mr. Chairman, motion for Monday, October 31st.
Motion by Mr. Byrick, second by Ms. Fontenot to observe Halloween.
From 6 to 8?
Monday, October 31st from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Any questions? Any opposition? Having none, motion passes. Number 14, intergovernmental agreement between West Ascension Recreation District and the City of Donaldsonville. Councilman Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the contract and intergovernmental agreement between West Ascension Recreation and the City of Donaldsonville upon the audit being approved that we got today.
A second.
Motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Shakespeare to approve the intergovernmental agreement between West Ascension Recreation and the City of Donaldsonville. Is there any question? Mr. Valentine.
What was that, Coach? Upon audit, we didn't do an audit yet, which is required by the contract.
Right. It's required, and we got the audit today, and upon that audit being approved, we'd like to approve that contract.
When does this contract run out? This month?
It's been delayed for a while back, fortunately, the attorney to wait for this audit once we realized the audit had not been done as required by the contract.
Is administration okay with that?
I have not seen it yet. I think Roy got it yesterday.
We got it this afternoon, and it was given to our finance department to go over it. And with all the stuff going on, I was just talking to Ms. Gwen, and this is, you know, as soon as our finance people say it's okay, administration doesn't have a problem with it.
I would make a substitute motion to put this off until the next meeting, until they have time to review the audit, make sure everything is in place.
We have a substitute motion to postpone action on this until the...
It's still within the limits. It doesn't go out till the end of the month, right? Am I right on that, Parish President?
I'm sorry, Mr.
It
Valentine.
doesn't go out to the end of the month, or?
What's the exact date on that?
13th, October 13th.
Okay, would my motion create some problems then?
I don't think it would. We have a finance meeting next week, which will be the 13th, and I guess if we need to make that a special meeting for a few minutes just to vote on that one contract, but we can do a concurrent budget resolution, I guess, like Congress does, to extend it, to amend the current contract to extend it 2 weeks. I don't think that'd be a problem. I mean, I don't think the administration is going to stop funding it.
Mr. Jarrett.
Okay.
It was, Mr. Valentine, I think the only thing that was concerned was, what we were concerned with was the audit. They hadn't got it. And upon approving of the audit, we would go on and support the contract. I think that's would be the only thing. Now, if the audit doesn't come out clear to where the specifications on what we need, then we'll come back to the table.
Okay. Well, I'll withdraw my substitute motion then.
Mr. Hildenbeck.
Yeah, the cover sheet says to the council members that the intergovernmental agreement is presently being reviewed by legal counsel, Ricky Babin, and we'll notify you of any changes. So, Councilman Thompson, would you include that in your motion, amend your motion to include legal review by counsel?
We reviewed it.
You finished with it, Ricky?
Yes,
okay.
Everything's
Withdraw
okay.
that recommendation.
Just on approval of the audit.
Okay. Any further questions? Any opposition? Having none, motion passed. Move to the committee reports, Utility Committee. Do we have someone reporting on?
No report, Mr. Chairman.
No report on Utility Committee. All right, Personnel Committee. Mr. Valentine.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shea Snyder.
We did meet with the Utilities Committee, if I could just
Step up to the mic, Mr. Shea
give you
Snyder.
some information. We had a special meeting and we approved a change order pending review by URS for a road bore on the on the Darrow sewer project, and they would recommend it to go ahead with LCDBG grant on the Lemonville A-Bin area for a sewer project, and that's going to be recommended for a vote at the next council meeting.
Okay. That's all you have?
Yes.
Thank you. Personnel Committee, Mr. Chair, Mr. Valentine.
Yes, Chairman Savoy. The Personnel Committee met actually last night and interviewed several people and recurring Ascension Parish Planning and Zoning members, and all will be, and also the Ascension Parish Waterway Commission for Avon River, and actually all the waterways of Ascension Parish. And those recommendations will be at our meeting in Gonzales. Did not have time because of the time limits. I did not want to spring all those recommendations on you tonight, so we'll have that in Gonzales in 2 weeks. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Recreation, Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Chairman, upon my recollection and upon talking to some people that Mr. Tumpley has resigned, are we putting in the applications?
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Did you ask if Mr. Tomplay, he did take another job?
Right.
Last day was last Friday, and the personnel office is advertising for that job.
I have nothing else.
Okay. Transportation Committee, Ms. Fontenot.
We have several items, Mr. Rue. Did you want to take care of those items?
Yes, sir. The First item A is a request for approval of supplemental agreement in the amount of $19,948 to the contract GSA road widening project. What this is a supplement for the Boudreaux Road Phase 2. What happened on this, it was split up into two phases. The original contract with GSA was only one phase, which means only one bidding and one construction administration. We felt it's justified, and we took it to the committee, and the committee recommends this to the full council acceptance.
Vote to accept.
A motion by Mr. Shea Snyder to accept the recommendation from the committee. Do I hear a second? Second. Second by Mr. McConnell. Any questions? Any opposition? Having a motion passed.
Item B is a request for authorization to issue a task order to GSA to provide bidding construction management for services of Phase 3 of the 2004 road project in the amount of $27,700. Phase 3 is the Hope Villa road project that was approved by the council. And in their original bid and original compensation package, it was only for the engineering design and submittal to for the block grant. It did not include bidding and construction administration, and that's what we're asking for here.
And that is better known as trailer land, finishing up
Yes,
trailer
sir.
land.
It's the trailer land road, and that the supplemental amount is to pay for the bidding and construction administration of that project, which wasn't included in that first compensation.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Dempsey Lambert, second by Ms. Fontenot. Is there any question? Any opposition? Having none, motion passes.
Item C has to do with the same project, and it's request to advertise for bids for that project.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Todd Lambert.
Second.
Second by Mr. Byrick. Any question? Any opposition? Having none, motion passes.
Third item that was approved by the committee is a request for approval of a relocation agreement in an amount of $28,251 for relocation assistance of parcels 39 and 40 of the West Worthy Road project, widening project. The agreement is the full payment of expenses in relocating the residents and other improvements necessary in the right-of-way acquisition of West Worthy Road widening project. The project is made in 3 installments as work progresses in removing the residents. It was recommended by a right-of-way agent, by a consulting engineering firm, and also by the committee for acceptance.
Move the resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Byrick, second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Is there any question? Any opposition? Having none, motion passes.
First request is approved by the committee, and the recommendation to the council is a request for approval to establish a speed limit of 45 miles an hour on Parker Road from LA 44 to Ascension 929. This section has recently been reconstructed to higher standards for the road project.
They are quite happy with 35 miles an hour. They are requesting that it remain at 35 miles an hour. The next road south, which is Abbey James Road, which is a comparable road to Parker Road, is at 35 miles an hour. And due to the nature of the subdivision and the deep ditches and the subdivision having so many small kids, the residents are asking that we leave the signs as is. And if what I would do at this point, I'd like to make a motion that we send this back to committee or refer it back to committee, and we maybe have a little more discussion with the residents at the next transportation committee.
You got a motion to refer back to committee.
I'll second.
Second. Motion by Mr. Hillensbeck, second by Mr. Valentine. Send it back to committee. Is there any question?
Discussion.
Mr. Valentine.
Mr. Rue, how do we get 35 mile an hour zone, speed limits up when we took action on that?
We use
I'm just curious.
We use a nationally accepted method, which is part of the manual for uniform traffic control devices. It's used by all the states in the country and also the DOTD. And again, it's a analytical method of determining a speed limit. And we use that method to determine the 45 miles an hour. And again, I can go through the criteria for it, but it gets pretty involved.
No, I want to know why the 35 mile an hour.
Oh, the 35 miles.
Why did they get put up?
35 miles an hour.
Because that was the argument, and that's why we all decided on 45 miles an hour. We got a widening project.
Right.
We got a beautiful road, and no road you cannot change the speed limit on the road
unless you get authorization from the parish council. The road was, prior road, speed limit 35 miles an hour. 45 miles an hour was put there by mistake by the contractor. After the meeting,
Okay, so the contractor places signs
placed
there?
a sign. We, DPW, went back and put it back to 35 miles an hour because we're not allowed to change it until we get a vote of the council. That road is placed at 35 miles an hour until changed by the council.
Okay.
Mr. Byron.
I'll pass, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Well, I was just, until this discussion came up, Mr. Byerger and I were sitting here discussing why not just take that action now. If the residents want it to be 35 miles an hour, and if we have no problem with it being
okay with that, and I withdraw my
35 miles an hour, I don't know why send it back to the committee so that they can say 35 miles an hour when we have every right to vote on it now. So I'd just like to recommend that we accept the 35 miles per hour as posted.
Got a motion by Mr. Hillensbeck.
Yeah, let me withdraw my original motion, Jerry, and George will withdraw your second.
All right.
And the motion is to leave it at 35 miles an hour as posted.
And I'll second his motion.
Mr. Hillensbeck withdraws his motion to send it to committee. Mr. Valentine concurred. Mr. Hillensbeck followed with a motion to keep it at 35, seconded by Mr. McConnell. Is there any further discussion?
The administration has no objection to that either.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any opposition?
I feel better now.
Motion passes.
I want to get on the record.
You're not going to ask me to veto it,
But you did put the 35 up.
Back up. So.
You've done a real good job, but Bill, you walked away with a lot of money tonight.
You're right. I'm in good shape. Thank you.
That's all you have, Ms. Font?
Well, I just wanted to say that utility problems have been solved concerning the turn lane projects of 2004 and 2005, and GSA will begin advertising for bids next week. DOTD has already started the study for improvements to the intersection of Highway 42 and Ascension Highway 929. The traffic study is in place and is in line to begin the analysis process. The next transportation meeting is the second Tuesday of November, 7 p.m., DPW, following the Utility Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fontenay. Strategic planning, Mr. Shakespeare.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things we've done in our special meeting is that we sent to finance a budget adjustment monies to fund equipment for live TV for parish-wide, all parish meetings, and that will be discussed at the finance meeting next week. We also had a meeting, a subcommittee meeting, where we got together and went through the PUD proposal, Plan Unit Development proposal, and tried to place in the little missing numbers that needed to be put in there to advance that a little further on. And it was reviewed again by our zoning official, Mr. Lance Brock, with Mr. Charles Landry, and they concurred, and they're going to present that at the next strategic planning meeting in order to move forward with it. We also want to announce that we have a special strategic planning meeting this Monday, October 10th at 5 p.m. at DPW, at which time we're going to discuss the TV information that we're going to be put out a request for programming, and so that we can get bids coming back in for programming for places around Ascension. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Shakespeare.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Valentine.
Before we move on, I'm sorry, I do have a cleanup item here that I'm going to ask our attorney, Mr. Babin, and Mr. Parish President Hughes was there last night. We were looking at the resolution for the Waterways Commission, and we noticed that it was a resolution. In fact, Ms. Fontenay was the one that pointed it out to me. And most commissions, I think, may have to be created by ordinance. Okay, so there could be a hang-up on this Waterways Commission if we appoint one and we only appoint it by resolution. It's very possible that resolution may have to be changed to an ordinance and go through the ordinance process. Am I right?
The commission has to be formed by ordinance.
Okay.
appointments to the commission can be done by simple resolution. So the formation of the entity, the commission has to be done by ordinance under your charter.
Okay, so it's not going to slow down the process of appointing people to the commission, but we will have to draw up an ordinance to create it. Is that what you're telling me?
Should be one before the other. You should have a commission before you put somebody on it.
And that's correct. That's what I'm getting at. So I would think it would behoove us to get an ordinance drawn up creating the Waterways Commission, so that when we do place these gentlemen on it, or ladies, whoever we see fit to do that, that they do have some legality involved as far as operating as a commission.
Mr. Babbitt, would you please start moving toward a resolution on that, working with administration, an ordinance, working with administration and getting it back to strategic planning as soon as possible? Mr. Valentine, would you please postpone any further action on appointing anybody on that?
Yes, sir.
Thank y'all. Number 20, zoning review ID 1352.05, property located on the northwest side of Louisiana Highway 44 and Cannon Road to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential to crossroads commercial for Delat Family LLC. This is for review only, gentlemen. Ms. Fontenot. Number 21, zoning review ID 135305, property located on the east side of Louisiana Highway 42, approximately 200 feet west of McCoy Road, to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential to crossroads commercial. Track 8 of the Arthur Robbins property for Arthur Robbins. This is for review only also.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hillenbeck.
Yeah, I think y'all might want to go back and check your directions on that particular description. The property is on the south side of 42, as I understand it, and I appreciate it, not the east side. 42 runs east and west, and
It's gonna be kind of hard.
so the property is either going to be on the north or the south side. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Suzanne, would you please forward that back to the Planning Commission department?
Well, I'm not so, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but Highway 42 is also 61 from, and I don't remember if this property is on the airline or.
No, it's on 42.
This is Roy Robbins' place.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, well, that's off. That's 42, not 42 and 61 together.
Yeah.
Send that back to the Planning Department, Ms. Suzanne, for clarification. Introduction of ordinance. To consider an ordinance amending the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential to crossroads commercial, property located on the east side of Highway 44, approximately 200 feet south of Lee Drive, Lot 6A of the Charles Courtney property for Goldrad Properties LL Properties. Zoning review ID 133605. Mr. Babin.
I move to introduce the ordinance.
Second.
Moved by Mr. McConnell, second by Mr. Byriger. Open to introduce the ordinance. Any questions? Any opposition? Having none, motion passes. Number 23, introduction. To consider an ordinance amending the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential to mixed use, portion of Track B of the Robert Odom tract for RP Odom Heirs, property located on the west side of Airline Highway, approximately 300 feet south of Louisiana Highway 42. Zoning review ID 133705. Mr. Babin.
This was yours. I move to introduce the ordinance.
Motion by Mr. McConnell, second by Ms. Fontenot. Is there any question? Is there any opposition? Having none, motion passed. Number 24, introduction of ordinance to consider an ordinance to purchase property as requested by Fire Protection District Number 1, which is the Abbott Carpet property site. Legal, Mr. Babbitt.
I do have to say something on this one.
That's why I didn't.
We are also asking this particular, as you know, when we purchase property under the charter, it has to be done by ordinance. In order to tie the property up for a period of time to allow this closing to go through, the fire board has asked us to do an agreement to purchase and sell commercial property. We have done it. There's a copy of it in your package. It's very simple. Sales price $380,000. Property described, same property you're buying. It's giving us 90 days to close it. We would also ask that you approve this agreement as part of this agenda item It's the same property. All we're trying to do is get it tied down until we get it closed.
I move to introduce the ordinance and adopt the purchase agreement.
Second. Motion by Mr. McConnell, second by Mr. Dempsey Lambert. Any question, Mr. Byron?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure this is a good idea just quite yet. We don't even know what this building's going to cost to remodel. We don't know anything about it. All we know is a purchase price of $380,000. We have no idea what it's going to cost after that. I'm not sure it's a wise move to buy a piece of property with a building already on it, and we have no earthly idea what we're going to do after that. I'd like to offer a substitute motion to table this for now.
We have a substitute motion on the table by Mr. Byrigger to table the motion.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Shake Snyder.
Question.
Question, Mr. Dempsey Lambert.
I'd like to hear from our fire chief on this property.
Gentlemen, you have in front
Mr.
of
Chris
you.
Gonzalez.
I'm Chris Gonzalez, Chairman of Fire District Number 1. You have a packet in front of you that was put together by the members of 7th District Volunteer Fire Department with Mr. Henry Chauvin. It has a plat of the property there. We contacted Mr. David Guitro Builders. He said the estimated renovations on this property would be approximately $400,000. So we're in the ballpark about $800,000 of this project is our estimated cost on the project. The remodel on Roddy Road we were looking at was going to run about $650,000. So the move to Highway 44 will give us a commercial rating on Highway 44 from the Gonzales city limits all the way to Ralph's Supermarket. The members of 7th District Volunteer Fire Department, we met with them, met with their chief. This was a go up until, I understand, Monday. They changed their mind Monday. But they met with Henry Chauvin. They put this package together, not the fire board. The members of 7th District Fire Department put this package together with Henry Chauvin. Said if the fire board built this, they would be in agreement to move. That's what's brought us here tonight, gentlemen. We're looking at about an $800,000 project here that would improve the fire protection on Highway 44, give us a better commercial rating for the parish, and improve the fire service for the parish. And that's why we're asking y'all to move forward with this project at this time.
Mr. McConnell.
A question, would you retain the existing fire building on Roddy Road, or would you, would that continue to serve?
What we have there right now would no longer continue to be a fire station there. No, sir. The fire station would exist on Highway 44. We still own, the parish owns that property there. We don't have any plans for that property at this point in time. It depends on what this move does. But it does belong to the parish.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this action tonight is an introduction. There's still 2 more weeks involved before this, and it will come to a vote again, and there will also be a public hearing. So the public does have input, and we do have the opportunity to study this particular issue. I'd like to move forward with the original motion.
Mr. Hillsback.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gonzalez, how far will your coverage district extend as far as fire coverage? How far north will you go from?
The commercial rating is 1.5 miles from the fire station. It's a little bit different for residential. We're covered residentially parish-wide pretty well. It's the commercial rating that we're trying to improve, and being Highway 44 is a commercially rated highway, this move would give us a commercial rating from Ralph's Supermarket all the way to the city limits.
Okay, so you're better covering that area.
Better coverage on 44 to bring us coverage, a little better coverage even up on the airline highway at this point in time, if we make this move to here.
I agree with Mr. McConnell. I think we need to move forward, and though Councilman Berger brings up some good points, I think that can be worked out between now and the next time we meet. That's all.
Mr. Byrigger.
Yeah, I think if we get a clarification from Mr. Babin, if you vote on this yes tonight, you do enter into a purchase agreement. You're going to be bonded.
The purchase agreement, my understanding, is pending council approval. So even though you vote, my opinion is, even if you vote to move forward to this, it still doesn't constitute council approval.
All right, Mr. Babin, let's hear from you.
We can put in the purchase agreement as contingent upon council approval. The property doesn't get bought until there's an ordinance. But we couldn't just authorize somebody like the parish president or somebody else to sign this agreement. It took council approval to enter into a contract, because the contract is worth more than $10,000.
I believe that was in Mr. McConnell's motion.
I think you're okay. We'll put in here it is subject to council approval. But you are approving a contract to buy tonight,
pending,
if you choose to. You can cut that part out and hope for the best.
Mr. McConnell.
And really, Mr. Chairman, what a purchase agreement does is it just prevents somebody else from stepping up and buying the property while you're putting your ducks in a row. If you cannot align your ducks, then the agreement expires and it's back on the open market again.
Mr. Dempsey Lambert.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think that's what we need to do. Just like the parish president may know tonight, New Orleans is moving closer. This property is a good location, and we let it go back out. Somebody's going to scoop it up. We need to move quick. Any further questions?
I've got one, Jerry, make sure.
Mr. President.
I met with the fire board a couple of times, and the chief wasn't aware that there's been some changing or politicking, whatever going on since then. Ricky, is there anything in that purchase agreement of earnest money or where we're going to lose some money if we don't exercise the option to purchase within that 90 days?
No, sir, there's no earnest money.
Okay.
We don't do earnest money with government contracts.
Thank you.
Any further questions? We have a substitute motion on the table, on the floor to table this item, this issue. Do I hear any opposition?
I oppose.
Let's take a roll call. Ms. Suzanne. This is a substitute motion to table going forward with the Abbott James property.
Abby Carpet.
Abbott Carpet.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Councilman Shakespeare.
Yes.
Councilwoman Fontaine.
No.
Councilman Dempsey Lambert.
No.
Councilman Hillensbeck.
No.
Councilman Valentine.
No.
Councilman Todd Lambert.
No.
Councilman McConnell.
No.
Councilman Byron.
Yes, ma'am.
Substitute motion fails. We move to the original motion. What's the pleasure of the council on the original motion? Is there any opposition to the original motion? One objection, Mr. Byringer. Motion passes. Number 25, introduction of ordinance to consider an ordinance to provide for and set a reasonable fee for the Parish of Ascension to provide copies of public documents. Legal, Mr. Babbitt.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. McConnell.
This was not really discussed in any committee, and it was not hashed out, and it was just presented tonight. Since it's a procedural matter, and in my opinion, it's administrative and it's not a legislative matter, I would offer a motion that this be referred to the executive committee for discussion and further consideration.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Mr. McConnell to send this issue to the executive committee. Executive committee?
Yeah, it's a procedural matter, and that the executive committee considered a procedural matter.
Second by Mr. Hillensbeck. Any questions? Ms. Fontenot.
This was supposed to be on the strategic planning committee.
But it wasn't.
And it wasn't. But as a councilman, I have the right to introduce an ordinance, and I'm taking that right tonight. And Mr. Babin, can you enlighten us as to why we need an ordinance to set the fee?
We were asked, technically the charter says fees charged to the public, including taxes, have to be approved by this council. So in order to avoid any improprieties or appearance of us not doing it exactly by the book, we thought it would be best to just go ahead and bring it to the council. Also, you had met with me and asked me to try to draw up a uniform set of standards and a procedure that our records custodians can use and adopt the way everybody knows what the rules are, and so that's how this came about.
Thank you. Mr. Babin, do we need to set a fee in it tonight, or can we wait till the public hearing?
You can wait till a public hearing. I mean, I left that part blank because I didn't know what you were going to charge.
The reason why I do have a lot of information that I will bring out at the public hearing.
Yes, ma'am. You can wait, put it in. You can amend it at any time, even past public hearing. So we'll just amend it and add the fee that you wish.
Thank you.
Mr.
I make a
Chairman.
motion to move the ordinance.
There's,
Just
there's a motion on
introduce
the table already. You'll have to have ask for a substitute motion, Ms. Fontenot.
What's the motion?
The motion is to send it to the...
Strategic planning?
To send it to the executive committee.
Okay. I'll make a substitute motion to introduce the ordinance. Thank you.
Have a substitute motion to go forward with the introduction of the ordinance.
I'll second.
You got a second by Mr. Valentine. Before we go to a vote, we do have a citizen wishing to speak on this, Ms. Catherine Goppel.
Good evening, Chairman Savoy, council members, and Parish President. The ordinance before you establishing fees for copies of public records will ensure that access to our government will not be arbitrarily or unjustly thwarted. The freedom we have as Americans and citizens of Louisiana to be involved in the political process is secured by our state constitution and the laws of Louisiana. Benjamin Rush, founding father, member of the Continental Congress, signer of the Declaration of Independence, Surgeon General in the Revolutionary War, and one who successfully led the fight to ratify the federal Constitution, said that this about the stewardship of our freedoms. Every citizen of a republic must watch for the state as if its liberties depended upon his vigilance alone. Our liberties can only be secured by vigilance. It is not only our right, but our duty as citizens to exercise this vigilance. This is a responsibility that I personally take seriously. Open meeting laws and rights to examine public records bring accountability to public servants. Access to our government is essential if our freedoms are to continue and our government be secure. I want to thank Councilwoman Fontenot for introducing this ordinance, Parish Attorney Ricky Babin for drafting it, and each one of you on this council for your consideration. Support for the passage of this ordinance ensures the rights of citizens and your accountability to the public. Thank you.
So we have a substitute motion to move forward with the introduction of the ordinance.
Some further discussion, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. McConnell.
I want to point out that I'm not opposed to this, okay? The Constitution was mentioned. The First Amendment to the Constitution, number one, guarantees the right of the people to petition their government for redress or for any purpose. And to me, the right of the public to know, the open meetings laws, the right of the people to examine documentation is sacrosanct. And I don't want to do anything to in any way cut that back. I believe in that very strongly, because you're right. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Was that Lincoln who said that, Ms. Goff? I don't remember, but that's an honest to goodness quote I may use on my Rotary bulletin one day, Mr. President. But I strongly believe in this. However, the reason I recommend that this go to the executive committee to look at it is I believe that it is inadvisable to set a fee in an ordinance, because anytime you need to change the fee for whatever reason, you've got to go through the whole ordinance process again. I believe it would be better suited if the ordinance just stated that the administration or government has the right to charge a fee, and that the fee can be set by resolution. We did that same thing with our zoning fees. We did the same thing with building fees and sewer connect fees. It's set in ordinance that government can collect these fees, and then the actual amount of the fee is set by resolution by this body. That's why I think that needs to go to the executive committee and to be worked out. And that was the reason for my motion.
Mr. Valentine.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson said that.
I understand what Mr. Martin McConnell is saying, but if you will go back and look when the committees were formed, the executive committee was not formed to essentially do what Councilman McConnell is talking about. Executive committee essentially only acts. We do not have regular meetings that consist of Mr. McConnell, myself, and Mr. Hillensbeck dealing with areas where there's an emergency and the full council cannot vote on it. If he would like to send it to a committee, he can send it to strategic planning, which would be more appropriate because the executive committee does not meet on a routine basis and only meets with emergency. And if you look back and when we formed the committees, that's one of its goals. So I commend him for wanting to do that, but essentially he's putting it toward the wrong committee.
Mr. Shakespeare.
I would agree with Mr. Valentine that it should go. We did have it set up to go to strategic planning, and it was not put on the agenda, so we did not act upon it, and therefore I think it should, as a procedure, go back to committee. I think everything should go through committee, and I am in support of it, but I do think it should go back to committee so that we can bring it forward as a recommendation from the committee.
Mr. Hillsbeck.
I think we decided early on that ordinances were going to come from committee. In fact, I think if we go back and review, I'm pretty certain that's even in our bylaws, and we're violating our bylaws once again if we move forward with this tonight. I am for full disclosure, and I want the public to be able to get anything and everything that they ask for, that they need. I think it's a good check and balance to keep tabs on what we're doing. I have no problem with that, but I do have problems with voting on this tonight simply because somebody wants to move forward with it. I would like the committee process to be honored. And saying so, I would make a second substitute motion that this be referred back to Strategic Planning Committee.
We got a second substitute motion, I think.
Mr. Babin. Help me out here. Keep me straight. Is it legal for us to have
You have a motion, you have a substitute motion. And you have a substitute motion of the substitute motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think Robert's Rules of Order deals with that. I'd vote on the first substitute motion, and then somebody, if it fails, can make a substitute motion to send it to the alternate committee.
Thank you,
never read
Mr. Babin.
anything that says you can substitute a substitute.
Your substitute motion is...
Or Mr. McConnell could withdraw his first motion and stipulate he could send it to the Strategic Planning Committee, since he is such a good American.
That is another good option.
Mr. Chairman?
Hang on. Before we go there, Ms. Fontenot.
Mr. Hillensbeck, did you not bring to this council an introduction to an ordinance for a lighting district? Should I not be given the same consideration as you? Mr. McConnell, did you just not tell this body that it was okay to introduce an ordinance because we had 2 weeks to discuss it? Is it not the same thing? I tried my best to get it to committee. I wrote an email to Miss Suzanne. I called Miss Suzanne. I called Miss Gale. I even brought it up under new business, and we did discuss it in strategic planning under new business. When I called Miss Suzanne to ask why it wasn't on there, she said she put it on the agenda. I said, well, the charter allows me to introduce an ordinance. Leave it there. I'm asking you tonight to support the introduction of this ordinance because I will have the information that this body needs to pass it with the amount that I request on the inside. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Hillsbeck.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to the lighting district ordinance. I did attempt to go through Finance Committee. Finance Chairman advised me that it was not necessary, that we had 7 other lighting districts in the parish. Exact words of the Finance Committee Chairman was, we weren't recreating the wheel here or reinventing the wheel. Go straight to the council because we were facing a time period, a shortage to get it on the ballot the same time with the fire district votes. So just for your information, Ms. Fontenot. I don't think we're facing an emergency or a time shortage or a time period on this particular issue.
Ms. Fontenot, come on. Mr. McConnell.
Of all of the things that this council has to consider and worry about, I really don't think this is one. I'm going to withdraw my motion, and I will work with Ms. Fontenot and with our legal counsel to amend this ordinance the way that I think it should be appropriately presented, and then I'll also work with the administration to come up with a fair and equitable fee schedule for the reproduction of public records. So I withdraw my motion, and it is my intent to support. Well, the substitute motion now becomes the motion, does it not?
Original motion.
Yeah, I make a motion to introduce the ordinance. It's already done.
Original motion already there. Thank you, Mr. McConnell.
You're welcome.
We will move on the original motion, which is to go forward with the introduction of the ordinance. Any further discussion? Is there any opposition? Having none, motion passes. Number 26, public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the Ascension Parish Personnel Policy Manual Legal. Mr. Babbitt.
This is the original ordinance that was introduced. I think there may have been some committee work done on this ordinance with some suggested changes. We are reading what was originally introduced to you. If there's some changes, we need to make those amendments as you see fit, pursuant to your committee recommendations or your own wishes. So this is what was presented to you originally. To amend the Personnel Policy Manual of the Ascension Parish Government, whereas the Parish Council moves to strike number 2 of Section 2, Employment Status and Record, 4 levels of appraisal of the Personnel Manual of the Ascension Parish Government, whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to strike number 2, Section 2, Employment Status and Records, 4 levels of appraisal should read as follows. Number 2, 3 levels of appraisal. The standards of performance of personnel appraisal shall consist of 3 levels as follows: satisfactory, needs improvement, unsatisfactory. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to strike the 5th paragraph of Section 3, Employee Compensation, Wage and Salary Administration, Section F, compensatory time, which begins employees are encouraged to use. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to replace the 5th paragraph of Section 3, Employee Compensation, Wage and Salary Administration, Section F, compensatory time as follows: employees are encouraged to use earned comp time within 30 days from the date it is earned. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to add number 1, subsection A, B, C, and D to Section V, Working Conditions, Section O, Personal Appearance of the Policy of the Personnel Manual of the Ascension Parish Government. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to add number 1, subsection A, B, C, and D to Section V, Working Conditions, subsection O, Personal Appearance as follows: dress codes. Dress codes employees is broken down into employees who meet the public and customers face to face, all employees, Friday casual dress day, and dress code violation section. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to add number 1 to Section V, subsection P, uniforms of the Personnel Manual of the Ascension Parish Government. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to add number 1 to Section V, subsection P, uniforms as follows: employee uniforms. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to replace the last paragraph of Section V, working conditions, Section R, travel expense reimbursement, the Personnel Manual of the Ascension Parish Government, which lists the maximum reimbursement amount for meals, including tips, as supported by receipts. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to replace the last paragraph of Section V, working conditions, Section R, travel expense reimbursement, amount for meals, including tips, as supported by receipts as follows: breakfast, lunch, and dinner, in-state, in-state and out-of-state charges. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to replace Section V, working conditions, Section S, driver's license of the Personnel Manual of the Parish of Ascension Parish Government. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to replace Section V, working conditions, subsection S, driver's license should read as follows: subsection S, auto usage. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to rename Section V, working conditions, subsection T, confidentiality of information in Personnel Manual of the Ascension Parish Government. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to rename Section V, working conditions, subsection T, confidentiality of information as follows: driver's license. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to rename Section V, working conditions, subsection U, employee separation of the Personnel Manual of the Ascension Parish Government. The Ascension Parish Council moves to rename Section V, working conditions, subsection U, employee separation as follows: confidentiality of information. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to change Section V, working conditions, subsection U, employee separation of the Personnel Manual of the Ascension Parish Government. Whereas the Ascension Parish Council moves to change Section V, working conditions, subsection U, employee separation as follows: V, employment separation. Be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Council as the governing authority in and for the Parish of Ascension, does hereby authorize the above amendments to the Personnel Manual of the Ascension Parish Government. And like I said, that is the original draft that was introduced before this body.
I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McConnell, second by Mr. Byricker. Open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this public hearing? Do I hear a motion?
Motion closed.
Motion by Mr. Hillensbeck.
Second.
Second by Mr. McConnell, close the public hearing. Is there any opposition? Having none, motion passed. Number 27, the ordinance itself.
I move the ordinance.
Motion by Mr. McConnell. Do I hear a second? Second by Mr. Jensen Lambert.
Mr. Chairman.
Question.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Valentine.
The ordinance as presented does not reflect the errors that were made. Mr. Katz is still showing the money is not correct. That was, I think, was supposed to be done.
I'm not, excuse me, sir, I'm not sure what copies y'all have, because it was, the change was made to where it goes to per diem on the amount, and it goes to 6 months on the, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
And it goes to 6 months on the comp.
But the copies that we got don't reflect that, and that's what we're fixing to vote on.
Okay.
I'm not going to vote on something that's not supposed to be exactly what was recommended.
Oh, Mr. Katz, hang on, don't go nowhere. Ms. Suzanne, was there a new copy with the changes that came to the office that should have been in our packet? Or are we supposed to be looking at one that wasn't in our packet, maybe?
The last changes we were asked that Mr. Valentine asked us to make from the Personnel Committee was to go to the per diem, because there was an error in there where we were adding, we were getting away from we were going to do the same thing as the consul as far as expenses. That was done on travel. And the other thing was there was a request to extend the comp time from 30 days to 6 months, because some of these people want to use it around hunting season or whatever they're doing. And we had no objection with that, and I'm not...
It's here. I'm sorry. I'll withdraw it. We got 2 copies sitting here up here. And within the public, the ordinance itself, Ricky was reading from what we have here, and that's what I was following along with. But those 2 changes are definitely in here. So I have no objection.
Let's make it very clear. Ricky, which one did Ricky Babin read?
We introduced the original version, for better or for worse. I generally advise the secretary not to switch out versions of an ordinance, because that one was introduced, that version. You have the opportunity at this point to make amendments. I think your committee has offered some amendments that you wish to make. So I would make a motion to accept the ordinance with these amendments, number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. But that's why you probably have 2 versions, is the original version that we put in your packet, because that's how it was introduced. Number 2 is the version with the suggested amendments that your committee approved. So that's what should be there. And that's why we read the original one, because that's the one that was introduced at the public meeting last time.
Right. Mr. Byricker, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. I guess I need a substitute motion now to offer an amendment to the original motion to accept the Personnel Committee's recommendations on the policy and procedure.
Got a motion to accept the...
We're going to have to be specific. Yeah, you're going to need to be specific. One amendment would be to change the, replace the paragraph section B about working conditions on travel expense reimbursements in the amount of meals, including tips, from the original amendment to per diem $75 a day. Second, right?
So you have to do each one?
Well, that's the one amendment, and the other amendment pertains to comp time, which was recommended 30 days, but the Personnel Committee suggested that the comp time be taken within a 6-month period. That's the two amendments that need to be attached to this ordinance.
All right, so moved, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion to approve the personnel policy with the amendments by Mr. Byrick, seconded by Mr. Dempsey Lambert. Any further questions? Ms. Suzanne, do you have all that? Okay. Is there any opposition to the motion? Having none, motion passes. Number 28.
Motion adjourned, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Byrick, seconded by Ms. Kleinman. Any opposition? Having none, motion passes.